welcome. Yes, I am back again with another video. This is case number 5, and as you can tell by the title of this video, this one is going to be a very upsetting one. I know from the videos that I have made at this point are older cases. All of them have occurred in the late 1990s or the early 2000s at the latest, but this time I'm going to do a very recent case. This happened this year in 2022, and in my opinion this does contribute it to being highly upsetting because it is so recent. Reading and researching older cases seem to be generally less upsetting just because I think time has passed, but this one is still very fresh. The women that are to blame for what happened have not yet been to trial, so as of right now we don't have a conclusion to this case. Once a sentence has been produced, I will do an update video for this one. The moment I read the news article about this young, beautiful little girl and what was done to her, I immediately felt like I had to cover and talk about it. You guys know I cover brutal and very savage cases on my channel, and this one in particular really struck a nerve for me. I will now go ahead and show my disclaimer before I officially get into this story. The victim of this case is about a 4-year-old little girl, and I am going to be unapologetically very honest and will give my opinions on what I think about the people who did this to her throughout this video. So honestly, if you don't want to continue, if this isn't something you want to hear about, please go ahead and click out of this video, and hopefully the next case I cover, it'll be a little bit more suitable. But let's go ahead and talk about the murder of China Record. This beautiful and adorable little baby girl's name was China Miracle Monet Record. She was born on April 7th, 2018 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and this will be where she lived for the remainder of her short 4 years of life. She had such a contagious smile that brightens your heart when you see her. She's just a little doll, but because she was only 4 years old when her life was taken from her, there is unfortunately not a lot known about China and what she was like. Her father, Emery Queen, simply described his daughter as an angel. I wish I could tell you guys more about China, what she loved to do during her day, whether she played with dolls or loved to make arts and crafts, but unfortunately those types of things aren't in the news reports and articles regarding this case. This is really just a little baby that honestly didn't get the chance to develop her personality fully because she was so young. She had literally just turned 4 years old a couple of weeks before she was killed. This brings us to the day this case begins. On April 21st of this year, 2022, it was early in the morning. China allegedly took a sip of her grandmother's 80 proof Canadian Mist whiskey, which, first of all, the fact that China was able to reach up and get a hold of this bottle of whiskey is ridiculous in itself. I have no idea why a bottle of whiskey was so easily accessible when children live in the house. If this is even true, this is just hearsay at this point from the perpetrators of this case. But allegedly, China took a sip from this bottle that was just apparently laying around for anyone to open, and when her grandmother, Roxanne Record, age 53 at the time, who I will now be referring as RR for the remainder of this video, she caught her taking a sip, and she must have just completely lost it and exploded. She apparently lost all sense of sanity, common sense, and her humanity in general, in my opinion, and she took this little girl, brought her to the hallway of the house. She made her get on her knees, and as punishment for taking a sip of her whiskey, she then forced the 4-year-old to drink the remaining liquor in the bottle. It is reported that there was over half of the liquor still left in this bottle. Now, whether RR manually forced the liquor down this child's mouth, or if she made China take the bottle herself and she drank it all herself that way, I'm honestly not sure. I imagine that she forced it down her throat, because I can't imagine a 4-year-old child being able to take swigs from this bottle of whiskey, but that's just, again, my opinion. I could not, unfortunately, find any descriptive details while reading news articles and researching this case, but at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. RR forced her 4-year-old granddaughter to drink this whiskey, and meanwhile, while all this was going on, and she was forcing her to drink this whiskey, her mother, Khadijah Record, age 28 at the time, who is now going to be referred as KR, she sat there and she watched all this happen, and she did absolutely nothing to stop it. China's own mother just simply watched as her grandmother made her do this. And miraculously, China finished the entire bottle of whiskey. I truly don't know how she was able to do this when I think about it, honestly. I don't know how she didn't just completely pass out as she was drinking it. It's difficult for some grown-ass adult males to take a couple of shots of whiskey, but finishing over half a bottle of whiskey at 4 years old, this whole situation is just so horrendous. And just so you guys know, liquor doesn't give children the same effects as it does to adults. Here's a clip of a toxology expert by the name of Matthew Lee to explain a little of the effects of liquor when it is consumed by children in these amounts.
Dr. Lee says that is scary because alcohol affects kids differently than adults.
The blood sugar can drop so low that they become comatose, they can have seizures, and even result in death.
He says if a child gets their hands on alcohol, they need medical attention right away because depending on the amount, the damage begins almost immediately.
So when a child has that much alcohol, there is toxicity to all of their organ systems. So not just the central nervous system, thinking of like the brain and the cognitive impairments, but also the motor impairments, but as well, liver, heart, kidneys, all those can be adversely affected, particularly at a level this high.
So the effects of China drinking this whiskey was, I'm sure, pretty immediate, like the expert stated. So China does pass out shortly after consuming all of this whiskey. KR then picks up her child and she places her in the bathtub. And by the way, she did not call the police immediately either. And again, this is my opinion, but the possible reason why she didn't immediately call the police was either because she didn't want her or RR to get in trouble for doing this to a 4-year-old, or KR just thought stupidly that the alcohol affects 4-year-old children the same way as it does with adults, and she thought maybe China would just sleep it off and maybe just have a hangover and wake up in a few hours. Whatever the reason was, it wasn't a good enough reason. KR didn't call the police until China stopped breathing. The police were finally called to China Records' home address of 12824 Wallace Street at around 11 a.m. KR reported that her daughter was just unresponsive during this police call. Police came immediately, hearing that a 4-year-old is unresponsive. They did attempt to resuscitate China, but it was far too late. China Record was pronounced dead at the scene. Her body was then taken to East Baton Rouge Parish Coroner's office. They performed an autopsy and confirmed that 4-year-old China Record had a blood alcohol level at 0.68. Yeah, you heard it right. It wasn't 0.068. Her levels were at 0.68. And to paint you guys a better picture, the legal limit for an adult to be able to drive is up to 0.08. China's levels were over 8 times this. It just makes me so sick and angry. I then researched more about alcohol levels to even further understand what type of state China Records must have been in. Alcohol poisoning can start at 0.25 levels, and levels higher than 0.40 can lead to coma and death. And again, I cannot stress this enough. This is based on adult levels. I'm sure the reason why China's levels were calculated so high is because her body was so small. And I know I've said this several times at this point, but China was a 4-year-old little girl. That's just a baby. My jaw literally hit the floor when I read how high her alcohol level was. I just can't stand thinking about what her last moments on Earth had to have been like. Feeling intoxicated is one thing, but the levels China was at when she died, I can't imagine how she felt. I don't know if she felt anything. Her official cause of death was acute alcohol poisoning, which I'm not a toxologist, but using the word acute doesn't seem like the appropriate word for this, does it? So obviously KR and RR were immediately arrested and they have been charged for first-degree murder at this point. The trial has not begun yet for these two horrific women. I am anxiously waiting for this trial and to see China get the justice that she deserves. RR actually did make a couple of comments about what happened after she was arrested. She is quoted saying, quote, "I want to take full responsibility," end quote. Quote, "I messed up," end quote. Quote, "This went too far," end quote. And then she added, quote, "She ruined everyone's lives," end quote. I truly don't understand how a mother and a grandmother could do this to their child/grandchild. So let me talk about this for a minute. First of all, how the hell is forcing a child to drink over half a bottle of whiskey at any age, let alone 4, a punishment? Seriously, these women couldn't have thought of any other appropriate way to discipline China for taking a sip of her grandmother's whiskey? They couldn't have, I don't know, given her a lecture to explain to her that she is not supposed to be sipping whiskey because she is too young? They couldn't have given her perhaps a timeout or make her stand in a corner for a few minutes? Or could they have even just given her a normal spanking, which would have been highly more acceptable than what they actually did to her for a punishment? But no, all logical punishments, I guess, didn't exist in RR and KR's minds. Just for taking a sip of her cheap-ass Canadian Mist whiskey, which, by the way, I was curious to see how much Canadian Mist whiskey costs. And get this, I see for this whiskey, it costs from anywhere between $15 and $25, depending on the merchant that you buy it from, of course. So she really wants to say that she messed up? Messing up is running a red light or spilling some juice or some shit on carpet and making a stain. But forcing a 4-year-old little girl to drink enough whiskey to the point that it brought her to unconsciousness and then shortly after putting her into unconsciousness killed her, that's an abomination and an absolute unforgivable travesty. And second of all, yes, KR wasn't the one that forced China to drink this liquor. But in my opinion, what she did was no better. She took the coward's way, and she did absolutely nothing to help her daughter. In my eyes, she is just as guilty as RR, and therefore deserves the same punishment. I'll tell you guys what, if my mother ever tried to pull what RR did to China, to my child, I wouldn't just sit there and do nothing. I would fight. I would kick her ass to protect my child. I would immediately call the police to have her arrested for attempting to do any type of harm to my child. And I pray to God that everyone watching this agrees and would do the same for their children. Children are blessings. It's just not right. And it's absolutely sick. And there has to be something seriously wrong with a person who is willing to force a child to drink any amount of whiskey for a punishment. And for someone who is willing to just sit and watch as someone else kills your child. I personally hope they both end up getting the maximum penalty for what they did to China. And I did find this out very recently, actually, on March 24th, also this year, 2022. The state of Louisiana actually passed a bill that would allow parents that have been convicted of killing their minor children to receive the death penalty. And while I was looking into the reason why this bill was suddenly and recently passed, and I came across with, I can't even believe how many separate and recent cases of parents killing their own children came up in the state of Louisiana. Just in the year 2021 alone, there were several. I will go ahead and briefly name a couple of these cases because it is important to know just how many of these cases still happen today. And it just so happens that 3 separate cases occurred in a 4-day span in the state of Louisiana. 3 completely different locations within the state. And all the children were under the age of 3 years old. On September 24th, 2021, in Shreveport, Louisiana, Joshua Black, who was 10 months old, and his 5-year-old brother were thrown off a bridge into Cross Lake by their mother, Eureka Black. Both of these boys were recovered from the water, but Joshua Black was pronounced dead at the scene. Thankfully, his brother did end up surviving, and he was taken to the hospital for severe injuries. UB is currently being charged with 1 count of second-degree murder and 1 count with attempted second-degree murder. In January of this year, 2022, she has decided to plead not guilty and is currently awaiting trial. And if deemed guilty, she will be facing a life sentence without the possibility of parole. On the same day, September 24th, 2021, in the opposite corner of the state, Baton Rouge, which also happens to be the same city China Records was from, 2-year-old Nevaeh Allen was reported missing by her mother, Lanaya Cardwell. Her body was then discovered in a remote area in Hancock County, Mississippi. During the investigation, the police discovered that allegedly LC punched her daughter in the stomach after the small toddler grabbed her mother's last pair of contact lenses in the bathroom and ruined them. She allegedly punched her so hard in the stomach, she had fell back and she hit her head on the bathroom cabinet. Elsie was then taken to work by her boyfriend, Philip Gardner. When they got back home, she complained that her stomach was hurting and she had a clear bruise on her head, according to PG. She then laid down on the couch and became unresponsive. Instead of calling 911, PG then took it upon himself to try to do CPR on the child. When that didn't work, he then took it upon himself to put her body in a suitcase. He left his phone purposely while he traveled out of state to dispose of her remains. Her autopsy revealed she had severe trauma from brain swelling, and it honestly could not be ruled out if Nevaeh was still alive or not when PG put her in the suitcase. She could have been still alive and she could have suffocated in that suitcase before succumbing to her injuries. And really quick, I can speak on experience from this situation. I vividly remember being around 5 or 6 years old and doing the same thing Nevaeh did. I opened a bunch of my mom's contact lenses and I was opening up and playing with them because I guess I didn't quite understand what they really were, and I was just playing around being a little kid. And I gotta tell you, when my mom caught me doing that with her contact lenses, she was extremely pissed. I remember her being so angry at me. I remember her yelling and screaming. But she never punched me in the stomach so hard that I flew back and hit the bathroom cabinet with my head. She yelled at me. I'm sure I cried because my mother was yelling at me, and she put me in timeout for a few minutes, which is a normal response for a parent to have in this situation. It's so unreal to me that a mother could do this to their own child, just decide to punch her own child in the stomach. It's just so disgusting. Elsie and PG were both charged with second-degree murder, and PG was also charged with unlawful disposal of human remains and an obstruction of justice charge as well. They both pled not guilty and are currently awaiting trial, which is scheduled later for this year in November. Then on 4 days later, September 28th, 2021, in Thibodaux, Louisiana, 11-month-old Zabria Guidry's body was found in the back of her father, Jake Guidry's SUV. Allegedly, JG told police deputies that he had hit Zabria too hard. I don't understand what is with parents hitting their children to the point where they're being killed. Zabria had been suffering from severe abuse for weeks, and she had passed away from the cumulative injuries that she had received. She had multiple injuries to her body from these severe beatings. Her death was not a result from just one beating. Her cause of death is listed as battered infant syndrome. JG is currently being charged for second-degree murder, and her mother, Kajiana Butler, who reportedly was fully aware of the abuse that her child was enduring, and also did nothing to protect her daughter from the violence. And she was even pregnant with her second child at the time that this happened. She had also been arrested for second-degree murder of Zabria as well. They are both currently awaiting for trial, and if they are deemed guilty, they will be charged with a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. So you see 3 completely different cases and different circumstances with parents allegedly murdering their own children. I have no idea what was going on with the people in Louisiana that week in September of 2021. So many innocent children killed in such a small time period. So it is a great thing that this state has passed this bill to have these parents receive the death penalty. Something obviously had to change because clearly life in prison without the possibility of parole isn't enough to stop these people anymore. So let's go ahead and go back to China Records case. You know what was also very awful with researching this case was that all the articles you find online about this case have a specific headline. If you wanted to look up this case, the only headlines that you will see is grandmother forces granddaughter to drink whiskey while mom watches, or 4-year-old dies after grandmother forces her to drink whiskey, which in my opinion dehumanizes China Record and who she was, because she was much more than what happened to her. I hope everyone who hears or reads her story realizes this. She is more than just the story of her death. It really, really pissed me off that none of the articles about China included her name in the headline. Every aspect of this case, in one way or another, frustrates and physically sickens me. Child murder cases, for obvious reasons, are one of the hardest to research. But when I read about China Records case, I knew I had to talk about it. There was no question that this was a case that had to be put out there. People need to hear about these cases, even though it's hard, even though it's sickening to hear. because that is the only way for us as a society to start changing. For all the lives that these children have touched, that I have talked about today, my deepest condolences to the family, to the friends, and to anyone who has been affected. These have been horrific tragedies that never should have happened. What happened to China Record was an event that was so unnecessary. And now so many lives are affected and ruined because of what RR did and what KR didn't stop. China is gone, and she entered this life so briefly, and then she left in a way that I can only describe as a way straight out of hell. I sincerely hope that RR and KR receive the death penalty. I am not a forgiving person when it comes to these two women, and to any other similar case like this. And to be very candid for a moment, the death penalty for them isn't enough for me. I can't call that justice. If they do get the death penalty and they get the lethal injection, that's not enough. What would be justice for China Record, in my opinion, is if RR and KR were forced to go down on their knees and be forced to drink whiskey until their bodies shut down, the same exact way China Records did. That would be justice. And you guys can disagree with that. Everyone has their own opinion for what would be justice for a specific situation. And if you do have an opinion on what should happen to RR and KR, please leave a comment below. I would love to read your guys' opinion regarding this case. I will definitely be watching for the results for this trial and will be posting the results as soon as they are announced. But as of right now, this is all I have for today's case. Thank you all so much for listening and for watching. I know this one is very upsetting. I know my own blood is boiling from talking about this case. As always, please like, share, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you all for the support. I will be back with case number 6 as soon as possible. But until then, bye guys.